It's an honor to be here again as your Secretary-Treasurer, and it's a privilege to work with my colleagues here on the board, most especially our Executive Vice President Annie Hill and our President Larry Cohen. With our movement under assault, I can't think of two others that I would want to lead us through this very difficult time. And I wish I were standing here in front of you today, helping to make plans for explosive growth in our union on the heels of the Employee Free Choice Act becoming law. But all of you know that sad, sordid tale by now. Instead, I'm charged with filling you in on where we stand as a union without the benefit of employee free choice. Well, first off, let me assure you that politically we will not stand idly by and feel sorry for ourselves. With 60 Democrats in the United States Senate, it was reasonable to expect that we could hold our own and get a vote in favor of employee free choice with this supermajority. But we had senators who forgot how they got into the world's most exclusive club, one in particular, Blanche Lincoln. So I was thrilled this morning when President Cohen invited Lieutenant Governor Halter to come here, because I viewed the Lincoln-Halter race as a key turning point in our movement. For the first time in my career as a union activist, we were holding the promise us anything but turn their backs on us when they get into office candidates accountable. We took on the Democratic establishment, the White House, former President Clinton, who glibly characterized us as special interest groups, all of whom rallied blindly to the side of Senator Lincoln. They were joined by corporate interests, the oil industry, Walmart, and the Chamber of Commerce, who recognized that they could beat Lincoln in November, but stood a good chance of losing to Bill Halter. And they didn't play by the rules either. In fact, on the day of the runoff election in Arkansas, in the same county where on election day, primary election day, there were 44 polling places, on that same day there were 2 polling places open. And it just happened to be a county that went heavily for Bill Halter. So they pulled out all the stops to make sure they could hold on to that power. And while Blanche Lincoln may have won that primary, I can assure you it was labor that won that day. Blanche Lincoln will lose in November and be replaced by a Republican, but I don't count that as a victory. The victory that comes with the message that we sent to each and every blue dog Democrat that might be tempted to turn his or her back on working families in this country. I can assure you that political insiders realized that Senator Lincoln had to spend every dime she could get her hands on in the primary, and as a result, the cupboard is bare for November. And her labor sugar daddy is not taking her calls any longer. So while we lose the seat in the fall, we win, as in the long run, spines around the country start to stiffen up. And God knows we need a few more spines in this town. But in the meantime, what's on the horizon for CWA? We find ourselves in a situation largely unfamiliar to our union. The books are closed on the 2009 and 2010 fiscal year, and I'm sure it comes as no surprise to any of you that we have been experiencing unprecedented membership loss. In fact, this past fiscal year, we lost more members than in any year of our history. We'll start the upcoming fiscal year with 32,000 fewer CWA members than the previous year. And announcements from some of our key employers tell us that the year ahead is likely to be the same. But beyond the human pain of that, which is immeasurable, what does this mean for us as a union in dollars and cents? In the 2007-2008 fiscal year, we projected over $120 million in dues income. For this fiscal year, 2010-2011, we're projecting a dues income of $99 million. A dramatic drop, to be sure, but each of you have experienced similar losses, maybe just with a few less zeros in the equation. A union that is going to survive into the future, especially one that has the added dimension of financial losses, needs to be in a constant state of self-examination. Simply longing for the past is not a strategy for the future. Under President Cohen, we began that process back in 2005 with our Ready for the Future initiative. Passed in 2006, it has enabled us to train and energize hundreds of activists across the country. As a follow-up to that, I was asked to be a part of a committee to take a look at the work we began with Ready for the Future. We came out with a number of suggestions, and I want to thank you for the bold action that you took to adopt most of those this morning. But our report did not end there, and I hope you'll take the time to read all of it, not just the items that required action here at this convention. For example, we believe that a serious discussion of the allocation of our assets needs to be taken by this union. We brag about our triangle: collective bargaining, organizing, legislative, and community action as the three sides that make this up. But truth be told, it is hardly a triangle when we spend nearly 80% of our assets on just one side of that triangle. With the desperate need for legislative action to give workers any hope for economic justice, and with our union losing 6% of our members every year, we find ourselves on a course that simply cannot be sustained. And while all three sides needn't be in perfect balance, it is a physical impossibility to build a triangle where 80% of the resources are on just one side. So for the here and now, however, the report you're going to hear from the Finance Committee later on this afternoon will include significant changes. It'll include cuts to accommodate our lost income. For example, we've become much more aggressive with the renting out of space in our headquarters building. In the past year, we leased out the entire second floor, and within the past month, we signed a lease with the Transport Workers Union to move their headquarters from New York City right here to Washington, D.C., and they'll lease out the entire 9th floor, including our executive board meeting room. We brought in professional fund advisors to manage and take fiduciary responsibilities for our Members' Relief Fund, our Defense Fund, and our pension plan. This change saved those funds over $700,000 a year annually in bank and transaction fees. We've implemented an expedited local dues processing procedure and are in the midst of reworking our overall dues processing systems. We've made application for the early retirement health care rebate under the new Obama health care plan, which may yield us from $200,000 to $400,000 in relief to cover some of our $8 million in annual retiree health care costs. We have reduced our audit fees by nearly $250,000 by eliminating some redundancies. But clearly, this is not a problem that we can simply cut our way out of. This crisis can only be addressed by an aggressive growth vision. And it's not just for the sake of our bottom line, but for the very survival of our existing membership. With only 7% of the private sector workforce in unions, we can't reasonably expect to make the same kind of gains at the bargaining table that we did when we represented a third of the workforce. And the right wing, which has made an art form out of driving wedges between workers, has a new target. Not satisfied with race, religious, or other dividers, now they've singled out public workers for attack. If you're a public sector worker today, you are under assault from nearly every corner of our society. It reminds me of the quote made famous in the 1800s by railroad tycoon Jay Gould. He bragged, "I can hire one half of the workforce to kill the other half." Over 100 years later, if you're a public worker, it sure feels that way. Our nation desperately needs a revitalized and re-energized labor movement, not just for the sake of our survival, but for the sake of our overall economy. We cannot sit by and watch the tide of wealth continue to stream away from working class families and into the hands of the super wealthy. I'm sure many of you remember Joe the Scab Plumber from the 2008 presidential campaign. He asked then-candidate Obama about taxes on small businesses. And in the answer, Senator Obama talked about the need for the redistribution of wealth. Instantly, the minions at Fox News and others rose up in horror. Wasn't that socialism? Sadly, we never heard the senator utter the words redistribution of wealth again during the campaign. But I submit to you, my friends, that is exactly what we need to do in this nation. How many of you today consider yourself to be in the top 10% of the nation's in terms of financial wealth? Anyone? Since we don't have guests here any longer, I guess nobody here qualifies. I can assure you nobody up here is in that category either. Well, the top 10% of Americans control 71% of the wealth of this nation. If you add the next 10% in, you'll find that the top 20% controls 82% of the wealth of this nation. The bottom 60%, and that's a group that includes all of us in this room, the bottom 60%, we control less than 5% of America's wealth. And in fact, the bottom 40% own less than 0.2% of America's wealth. The bottom 40%. I mean, think about that. The people that create the wealth enjoy the smallest percentage of it, and the rich just keep getting richer. And not to pick on you Yankee fans, but I will. You Yankee fans who are saddened with the passing of George Steinbrenner, who, by the way, George was from my hometown back in Ohio. But before you shed too many tears for George's family, do you know how much taxes they will pay on George's $1.3 billion estate? Exactly. Zero, zip, nada, nix, not a penny. Money that we work for every day is taxable. But inherited wealth, tax-free, no matter how large the estate. And George, by the way, was the fourth billionaire to die this year without having their estate taxed. The rich and powerful in this nation control the wealth, and they will do whatever they need to, whatever it takes to hold on to it. The system is broken, brothers and sisters, and it will be up to us, the labor movement, the greatest instigator of social change in the last century and in this century, to step up and lead the coalitions that will be necessary to make changes our nation needs. Dickens' Tale of Two Cities opens with, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." And so it is here. With all of the challenges facing us, we can leave this hall with unity like we have never seen before and turn this into the best of times. Or we can turn on ourselves to the delight of those who would love to see us fail and quickly see bad times turned into the worst of times. I know we're better than that. With all of the problems on our plate, you have demonstrated a commitment to our union and our movement that is second to none. Despite all of our differences, I can't think of a better group of people to go into this battle with than our members and the leadership that they have entrusted in this room. And so let me close this afternoon with one of my very favorite quotes. It was by Catherine Booth, who was the co-founder of the Salvation Army. She said, if we are to better the future, we must disturb the present. Thank you for being willing to join as President Cohen leads us to rip down the do not disturb sign that the status quo has hanging outside the gates of power, and charging forward to better the future for our members, their families, and working families all across this nation. Thank you for allowing me to spend this time with you this afternoon.